You know something that almost no other animal can understand. One day, you're going to die. Not just that other people die. Not just that animals die. You. You can imagine yourself getting older. You can imagine your future. You can even imagine a world where you're no longer here. And somehow your brain can understand an event that hasn't happened yet. That is incredibly strange. Because as far as we know, humans are unusual in how deeply we understand our own mortality. But here's the problem. We can't ask an animal what it thinks about death. So how do we figure out when humans first realized that life eventually ends? We have to look at what our ancestors did with their dead. And the answer takes us surprisingly far back. For most of the animal kingdom, death is simply part of the environment. An animal dies. Other animals may investigate the body, some may stay nearby, some may even behave strangely around it. Elephants, for example, have been observed touching and investigating the bones and bodies of dead elephants. Chimpanzees have also been observed staying with dead members of their group, sometimes for surprisingly long periods. So animals clearly notice death. But noticing death isn't necessarily the same as understanding your own mortality. A chimpanzee might understand that another chimp is no longer moving, but does it think, one day that will happen to me too? We don't know. And that's where archaeology becomes incredibly interesting. Because humans leave clues behind. One of the biggest clues is burial. Instead of simply leaving a dead person where they died, humans sometimes deliberately placed bodies into the ground. And this behavior goes back a very long way. At sites associated with Neanderthals and early humans, archaeologists have found bodies positioned in ways that suggest intentional burial. Some of these sites are hundreds of thousands of years old. Now, burial doesn't automatically prove that someone understood death in the same way you do. There could have been practical reasons. Maybe the body attracted predators. Maybe leaving a body exposed was dangerous. Maybe the group simply wanted to move it somewhere else. But some burials become much harder to explain as simple cleanup, because eventually humans started putting things with the dead: pigments, tools, beads, objects that appear to have mattered to the person or the group. And that changes the question, because now we're not just asking, did they know this person was dead? We're asking, what did they think death meant? That's a much bigger question. And it gets even stranger when we look at one of the oldest things humans created: art. Tens of thousands of years ago, humans were painting animals, making sculptures, carving symbols, decorating objects, and creating things that didn't have an obvious survival purpose. Why? We can't know exactly what every ancient artist was thinking. But symbolic behavior tells us something important. Humans weren't just reacting to the physical world. We were creating ideas about it. And death was probably one of the biggest ideas of all. Think about your own brain. You can imagine something that doesn't exist. You can remember someone who isn't here anymore. You can imagine yourself 10 years from now. And you can imagine yourself not existing at all. That ability is terrifying. But it may also be incredibly powerful. Because once you understand that your life is temporary, you can start thinking beyond the present. You can save food for tomorrow. You can teach your children skills they won't need until years later. You can build a shelter that someone else will use. You can make a tool that outlives you. You can tell stories so that information survives even after you're gone. And eventually, humans started building things specifically designed to outlast individual lives. Monuments, tombs, temples, graves, entire cities, civilizations. Think about that. A human being can spend years building something they know they may never see completed. Why? Because humans don't only think about survival, we think about legacy. And this may be one reason death appears so often in human culture. Across thousands of societies, humans developed rituals surrounding the dead. Some buried bodies, some burned them, some preserved them, some built enormous structures for them. Some believed the dead continued living somewhere else. Others believed they became ancestors. And some created entire religions around what happens after death. The details are completely different. But the question keeps appearing. What happens when we die? That's not just a biological question. It's a human question. And here's what makes this even more interesting. Knowing you're going to die doesn't just make humans afraid, it can also make us cooperate. Imagine living in a small prehistoric group. You know that eventually the people around you will die, so you form relationships, you protect your children, you teach younger members of the group, you remember people who are gone, you pass down stories, and eventually those stories become traditions. Traditions become culture. Culture gets passed from one generation to the next, and suddenly something strange is happening. Individual humans are temporary, but the information they create can survive them. Your body disappears. Your ideas don't necessarily have to. That's a huge difference. A chimpanzee can learn from another chimpanzee. A bird can learn a song. But humans can intentionally preserve information for people who haven't even been born yet. You can write a book for strangers centuries from now. You can build a building your great-grandchildren will use. You can create a piece of music that people will hear long after you're gone. You can even make a YouTube video. Yes, technically, you're participating in the same extremely strange human tradition, making something that might exist after you don't. And maybe that's why humans became so obsessed with names. We name our children. We name places. We carve names into stone. We write biographies. We keep photographs. We create family trees. We're constantly trying to preserve pieces of people because deep down, humans understand something incredibly uncomfortable. Being forgotten is another kind of disappearance. And that brings us back to the original question. Are humans really the only animals that know they're going to die? Honestly, we don't know. Other animals may understand death in ways we haven't figured out how to measure. They may experience grief. They may understand that another individual is permanently gone. And some animals behave around death in ways that scientists still don't completely understand. So we shouldn't pretend the mystery is solved. But humans clearly took awareness of death to an extraordinary level. We didn't just notice dead bodies. We buried them. We remembered them. We created rituals for them. We told stories about them. We built monuments for them. And eventually, we started asking what happens to us. That's the strange thing about being human. You don't just live. You know you're living. You know other people are living. And somehow you can imagine a future where you're not. That knowledge can make life frightening, but it can also make life meaningful. Because if your time is limited, then what you do with it matters. The stories you tell matter. The people you love matter. The things you create matter. And maybe that's why humans have spent thousands of years trying to leave something behind. So here's the full picture. Animals respond to death. Ancient humans began deliberately treating their dead. Burials became more complex. Symbols and rituals appeared. Humans created stories about what comes after death. And eventually, we built entire civilizations around ideas that could outlive us. We may never know the exact moment when a human first looked at their own future and realized, one day, that's going to be me. There probably wasn't a single moment. It was a gradual realization passed from one generation to the next. But somewhere along the way, humans became something very unusual. An animal that knows its life has an ending. And instead of simply accepting that, we started creating things that could continue after we were gone. Maybe that's the strangest thing about us. We know we're temporary, and we keep building anyway.